Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So my name is Basel. I'm Associate Professor in Secure Electronics at the University of Southampton. And in today's talk, I would like to basically discuss the security of semiconductor chips and why should we all care about this topic. So I'm going to first give an overview of the IC supply chain and related security risk. And I'm going to talk then a little bit about the countermeasures we are working on at the University of Southampton. And then I will talk a little bit about recent government regulation and standard that we should be aware of. And then I'll provide some conclusions. Now, the IC supply chain has become a multinational distributed business. This trend was driven by the need to drive the cost down and also to manage the complexity of modern semiconductor chip. It's hardly possible now to think about an application in modern life that does not ultimately use one of those chips. Now, the problem in the past, those chips we were able to actually make those chips locally in one country or by one single company. But if you take the latest iPhone, for example, or smartphone, general Samsung, for example, then you'll find that the semiconductor chip that is the brain of the system can have more than 15 billion transistors. So that's 15 million transistors. And it's impossible for one single entity to be able to actually pull off this design feast, if you like. And what you see in this figure is the production process of modern chip. So it all starts with basically sourcing out some pre-designed IP. So design reuse is one of the main kind of approaches to manage this complexity. So these will be sourced out from different vendors. And then we have a system developer who will actually integrate those IPs and develop a chip design. And these will be sent out to a factory, which is abroad normally. And then those chips that are fabricated will be tested at a third country or a fourth country. And then they will be deployed and used. And then they will be thrown out. Now, at each of these stages, because of this multinational distributed nature of this chain, there are a number of security risks. So at the design stage, there is a risk of IP piracy. So this means that adversary might be able to have access to the design through different ways, including cyber attack on the company itself. There is also the risk of hardware trojans, so a malicious designer manipulating the design to perform some additional or unwanted tasks. At the SoC design stage, this is where the system is developed. We still have the risk of IP piracy. So IP piracy means that reverse engineering some of these IP that's been bought or actually reverse engineering the design itself. And then we also have the risk of hardware trojan. At the fabrication stage, in addition to basically IP piracy and hardware trojan, we have the risk of IC overproduction. What this means you agree with the foundry to fabricate maybe 100,000 chip, and then they will do the 100,000 for you, and they will actually produce 50,000 more chip. Now, those were not part of the contract, and you have no way to control how many chip they actually produce because you have handed them the design files. So all you could do is just trust them. So if this trust is broken or is misplaced, then you end up with additional basically design in the market or chip that carries your company's name, but they haven't been tested or checked as a normal chip will do. So they might fail. So that creates both financial consequences or basically losses, or it can also damage your reputation. Now, at the user stage, semiconductor chips are still at risk of side channel analysis. So somebody might analyze the power consumption or electromagnetic radiation or the execution time of different algorithm on those chips, and then be able to deduce secret information. This could be personal information, encryption keys, some sensitive data stored on those chips. And also, reverse engineering is basically a challenge here, because with the advance of techniques such as imaging and AI, it's possible now to actually reverse engineer some of the design if you've got access to the chip itself. Okay. Now, security risk also affect recycling. So some of those chips that supposed to be thrown out, they are depackaged and then cleaned and packaged again and resold as new. Now, recycling has a positive, basically, tone to it, but in this context, it does not. It's actually a serious problem. Because first of all, semiconductor chips do age, in a sense that their performance degrade over time for various reasons. So if you are to actually buy a counterfeited chip that's been recycled, that means it does not actually have the same performance and also reliability grade that it's supposed to. And if this, for any reason, was to actually be used in a critical or safety critical application, then you've got a big problem there. Now, in addition to those threats, we are also moving into a chiplet-based system. And when a chiplet-based system, when you hear this term, what does it mean? It means that the modern or monolithic systems, we used to actually have different blocks integrated on the same die. With a chiplet-based system, each of these components of the system will have its own chip. Now, chiplet-based systems are there to address critical problems when it comes to a semiconductor chip. First of all, they provide better yield. They manage to actually separate or optimize the manufacturing process for the specific component you're building. Maybe you need a specific manufacturing process for memory that's different from those that you use for a CPU or sensors. That will allow you to optimize this process for the subsystems. And also, it helps to overcome the limitation posed by the end of Moore's law. I mean, we have been enjoying Moore's law, for those of you that's not aware of it. So Moore's in the 1950 came up with this prediction that every 2 years we'll be able to almost double the number of transistors on chip. And that means that we can improve at the same price, so that we can improve performance, we can build more complex systems. But because we are reaching almost the end of this Moore's law, because we reached technology now 3 nanometers almost, we can't really scale transistor anymore. So we need to find better ways to actually achieve performance. And chiplet-based system can actually help us to continue to improve performance, irrespective of the limitation imposed by the challenges in scaling chip anymore. Now, so that's all good. In terms of security, chiplet-based system actually significantly increase the attack surface. So each of these, so ideally, what's going to happen that each of these chiplets will have to be manufactured. So they will go through a supply chain. So the single supply chain we had with normal system is now we can have 10 of those that goes into just one single package. And each of those will have its own security problem. So the use of multiple vendor and multiple dies actually significantly increase the attack surface and make our system even more vulnerable. So does this actually happen? What sort of problem that can actually result from these kind of attacks? Now, I can give you some examples. Let's start with IC counterfeiting. Now, IC counterfeiting, when we talk about counterfeit, we're talking in general about fake or unauthorized IC. So these could be IC that's been recycled. These could be IC that's been built, overproduced, or this could be IC that are created based on stolen IP blocks. Now, in 2001, there was a report by IHS that estimated that the losses or financial losses of counterfeit IC is running around 169 billion. That's costing the semiconductor industry at large. Now, in 2012, there was a report by the Senate in the state that estimated that there was 1,800 separate cases of IC counterfeit affecting military hardware in the US. These are not just problem affecting military hardware. In fact, in 2014, a cloned engine control unit was found in Honda cars that was actually controlling the injection of fuel into the engine. And when that was revealed, basically, Honda said, we don't advise driving those vehicles because this could fail. Okay? Now, counterfeit exists because it's financially profitable. So this will actually, adversary will make a lot of money by doing that because they didn't have to basically create the initial system. So it's a very hard problem to solve. And that was made worse by the chip shortage in the 2020 during the COVID years. So suppliers or basically system builder needed to actually source out some of those chips from the black market, and some of them were actually counterfeited. So there was a huge market for it. In fact, the Electronic Reseller Association International had a report in 2020 that the number of counterfeited components circulating in the market increased by 35% in that year compared to the previous year. And in 2023, Bulgarian customs has managed to seize over 61,000 counterfeited electronic devices. And counterfeiting is not something only criminal gang do. In fact, there was a report in 2017 by Attribute Spectrum saying that there was evidence of state-sponsored cloning. Now, the other major security challenge we face when it comes to hardware is basically hardware Trojan. And up to 2018, there wasn't really a public example of what a Trojan is. How do somebody can, I mean, it was an academic problem, but in 2018, there was a story reported by Bloomberg that a PCB Trojan was found in a server motherboard produced by Supermicro that used in more than 30 big US company and institutions, including Amazon, Apple, the Navy, the Department of Defense, data centers. And this allowed the attacker to actually create a stealthy door into the network and basically be able to access those data. Now, of course, companies denied that this ever happened. But then there was a study a year later by a scientist in Cambridge, from Cambridge University, and he basically showed that this is technically feasible, okay, to actually insert a small chip inside this motherboard that allow stealthy access. We might have heard the news in last basically few weeks on this incident with the pages in the Middle East. And in addition to the horrible loss of life caused by this incident, this was a classic example of hardware tampering. And this was actually one of the first that nobody can deny that there was tampering in the actual hardware supply chain in this case. To insert or to modify the functionality of those devices in order to allow them to explode at remotely. And so penetration of the IC supply chain and hardware supply chain is feasible and is actually happening. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about, very briefly, about what are we doing in Southampton to basically defend against those attacks. So we are investigating the use of physical and global functions. So this is based on the phenomena of physical disorder. Every physical object at this at the microscopic scales, including silicon chip, has a certain degree of irregularity. Now, this irregularity in the case of silicon chip is due to process variation. Process variation means because these transistors we're making are very, very small, it's very hard to precisely control the dimension of these transistors. So therefore, even if we start off with something, the 10 nanometer, when you fabricate on different chips, then there will be slight variation on those dimensions, up to 10%. And physical and global function will make use of this variability to produce a unique binary identity for each device. Now, we have used PUF in this case to create a tracking system for hardware that allows you to basically monitor, track each chip throughout it from the moment it's fabricated until it's actually fitted into the product. And you can also continue to monitor it even when it's fitted until it's been discarded. So this was also using the blockchain technology. We're also working on the use of machine learning to detect hardware Trojan. And the idea here is to, when you've got a Trojan inside the system, this will lead to deviation of the behavior from normal operation. Okay? Now, in the case of pager, for example, this was not possible to actually do anything about it because as soon as it was activated, it exploded. But if the customer or the client suspected there's something odd or something not correct by the construction of the system or by its behavior, then it would have been easily detected. But some of the Trojan can hide inside those chips, and they will have impact, even if they are not active, on either the performance or the power or the radiation coming out of those systems. And we are using machine learning to exploit those variation and to try to detect the Trojan before it's been activated. Or this approach could also be used to test newly designed chips and to see if they have been tampered with before they are actually deployed into product. Okay, so I'm going to skip those. One of the challenges when it comes to Trojan detection is that it's very hard to predict where and how the adversary might actually insert a Trojan. So this is what I show you here. This is the number of scientific publications that tackled Trojans 5 years before the Bloomberg story. And most of them were looking for Trojan inside the chip itself. And very few predicted that the Trojan could be inserted at the PCB level. So this is a challenge that we need to think about, and effectively a Trojan could be anywhere and it could actually affect any device. Other work we're doing is we're developing also anti-tamper design system for critical application that also based some of these applications, drone, for example, they can be subject to physical tampering. And we're trying to develop anti-tamper system that can detect such tampering and respond in an intelligent way without destroying the underlying system if the risk basically is a false alarm. We have also developed a new threat model, basically to allow you to develop more relevant countermeasures. The threat model is called SIST. It's developed to address the hardware security risk. So it can be used to replace Stride, for example. And we have created a game, a serious game that's available on this link. I'm happy to share the slide after, so if somebody wants to look at it, and to promote this threat model, and also to teach this topic for other in the university. Right. Just a couple of minutes, I'm going to go through some of these relevant standards that in this domain. So the UK now have a national semiconductor strategy, and at the heart of this strategy is to safeguard the UK against supply chain disruption. So the government now is aware of this threat, and they're actually working to protect against them. I'm not sure whether there's enough investment though, but we have at least we have got a strategy. There was a problem book on hardware security problem, basically published by the NCSC, the National Center for Cybersecurity. That's worth looking at. There was also a hardware security program now active, run by NIST. And finally, the CHIP Act. The CHIP Act was aimed to almost reverse the whole trend of globalizing the IC supply chain by prohibiting or limiting the export of chip-related technology to countries that are not classified as friendly. Okay, and as a result of this CHIP Act, the whole production process is going down. There will be major changes, and this will ultimately affect customers. Whether they will be able to implement it, that remains unanswered, because this trend's been going for more than 40 years. Finally, some conclusions. I am expecting that there will be more attacks on the chips due to the increase of the complexity of these systems, and unless we manage to reverse engineer the whole, basically the whole trend. Path physical and global function can actually help to provide more traceability and anti-tamper approach to mitigate some of these threats. Machine learning is also expected to play a major role in this domain to manage the complexity. But chip security now is no longer an academic challenge. It's actually a government policy. So we should expect more investment and more work in this area in the coming decade, I would say. Thank you very much. Any questions?